I'm thrilled that we got Congressman Rich McCormick with us. I mentioned at the top of the show, we had Greg Landsman yesterday, who I view as a moderate on the left side. Rich McCormick, I view as a moderate on the right side. And a straight shooting guy who I am thrilled is joining us and is going to take your calls. Congressman, thanks very much for taking the time. Appreciate it.
Hey, thanks. Good to be with you. I don't know if I accept the term moderate. I'm certainly
that's fair.
I try to grow the church by. I always say, people, if you want to grow your party, it's like growing a church. You're not gonna get somebody to invite to your church by calling them an idiot. You're never going to convert somebody by punching them in the face. And if everybody in your church agrees with the minister, it's called a cult. We have diversity for a reason. I am a very conservative guy.
You're a conservative. You are definitely a conservative.
I want everybody in the church.
I got it. For all of my conservative listeners, I want to make it clear I was not demeaning Dr. McCormick by calling him a political moderate. And the funny thing is, I don't know that Landsman would have been thrilled with the characters. I think he was more into it than you would be. But conservative Congressman Rich McCormick, who listens to arguments from both sides. Is that a fair introduction?
Sure. Very fair, and I really think that's the only way we convince anybody.
I agree.
If I can convince you I love you, I can actually change your heart. But if I'm so busy trying to convince you that you're wrong, it'll never happen. Nobody gets on the internet and says, gosh, I hope somebody proves I'm an idiot today. It doesn't happen, guys. If you want real influence, try to convince somebody you love them.
It's one of the reasons that I really was so happy to have you on the show, because I have that respect for what you've done. We're going to talk in a minute, by the way, about something called the Incentivized Savings Act, which you are very much behind. I promise we'll talk about that. But before we get there, I got to ask you about this IRS stuff. I mean, aren't you concerned if it's true that the president is installing allies at the IRS for the purpose of investigating Democratic donors?
Yeah. First of all, the government should never be weaponized. Never, ever. Not by any party, not by any person, not by the president. And by the way, I think that we've had exceedingly powerful presidents. The last three presidencies, or should I say the last three presidents, we've gotten out of balance. The legislative branch is no longer equal to the executive branch, and that really concerns me. I want to be consistent, just like I thought you made a really good point, a very impassioned plea to be equal in our application of our opinion. Yep. If it's bad for Obama to do it, it's bad for Trump to do it. I don't like the government being too powerful. Back, most of the laws I focus on are to rein back in bureaucracies and even presidential power to make sure that we're in balance with our Constitution, which is really frustrating to people because everyone wants to see change. But it's the way we were designed on purpose, that we have an ineffective government so it would never become more powerful than the people themselves. And this has been abused by lots of presidents in the past. I don't want to see this president fall into that trap where, even though I do believe he was absolutely mistreated, absolutely had the law misappropriated against him, I don't think we should turn him out and use the same tactics against our enemies, because I just think it's wrong.
But again, Obama, when he learned of it, held people accountable, right? I mean, there were people who got pushed out of the IRS, and regardless of whether it was all conservatives or partly liberals, it was definitely more conservatives than liberals who they targeted, no doubt about it. And Obama said this is wrong, and these people got forced out. Yet Trump is advocating for it.
So here's the cool thing here's the good and the bad about Trump, and the good and bad about Obama. In my opinion, we know that he met with the head of the IRS, 30 times or some ridiculous number of times in his office. We have no idea what they talked about, but it was right after that when people started getting targeted. So you could say, okay, he didn't know about it and he held him. Once it was exposed, all of a sudden he was outraged. But until it was exposed, he was meeting with the IRS quite frequently until all of a sudden, which is unusual, we got to admit. So circumstantially, I'd say he probably did know about it. When he got caught, he said, oh, this shouldn't happen. The nice thing about Trump, whether you like him or not, he is transparent. If you don't like it, you get a chance to challenge him up front, both legally, in the media. Everything you see with Trump is what you get. That's not true of other presidents. And that's what a lot of people like about him, is that at least you know where he's coming from. He's being honest and authentic with nothing else.
But it seems to me that you don't like this if it's going to happen, right?
Well, if it is indeed weaponizing, the IRS or I don't care if it's the IRS, EPA, education, I don't care what it is. One of my bills is literally saying if you're getting taken to court as a bureaucracy and you lose your case, not only do you have to pay back that person, but it comes out of your budget. So you can't continue
Yeah.
to do it to over and over again to people in any bureaucracy. That's one of my bills because I hate overreaching bureaucracies. The government should never go after people. I don't care if it's independent or in conjunction with the president of the United States. I am absolutely a person who rails against this. I know several people in Congress on both sides who ran because the government was mistreating them and they won, and they are now trying to fight against that. So I hope it's
no,
not
I hear
true.
you. I hope it's not true too, and I hope that if it is true, that people like you will speak out against it. Let's talk about the shutdown. Congressman Landsman yesterday saying that the shutdown is a direct result of Democrats trying to bring down healthcare costs for everyday Americans. Your response?
Yep. Well, you can't do that if you're just increasing government spending by 1.5 trillion. It's still a healthcare cost. $1.5 trillion doesn't materialize out of nowhere. As a matter of fact, if you're going to spend it in the government, it's going to be paid with interest. Your kids and your grandkids have to pay for it. We're in dangerous territory. We're 30% deficit spending per year right now. This CR is to continue the funding at the levels that we agreed upon. When the Affordable Care Act was originally passed, all the Democrats, in order to get the Democrats, who had a supermajority at the time, in order for them to vote on this, you had to say the federal government's not going to buoy up Medicaid forever. You're going to have to eventually retract from it because state budgets have more appropriate billing. They have a budget that they actually have to balance. They can't print money. They have to be responsible. That was always the intention by Democrats and Republicans who voted on this originally. Now we come up to continued resolution where we are agreed. This is the same continuing resolution we continued with essentially COVID level spending. The only thing we had was essentially getting rid of waste, fraud, and abuse and Medicaid spending. So, where you're blowing up the insurance company. This is a really important point. I hate to ramble a little bit, but I want to educate your public a little bit on this. Insurance companies who are in the heart of this battle right now, they're the ones in the middle of Medicaid and Medicare, which they are basically paid for to manage, with a third of all claims denied in typical circumstances, are making 230% more profits, net profits, since the Affordable Care Act was instituted. You have tens of billions of dollars being made off insurance companies because of Medicaid and Medicare, which are government programs. If you don't hold them accountable and they get to increase their premiums by 9%, which your premiums have already gone up by 90% since the Affordable Care Act, put that in your cap and realize it's the fastest growing expense to all American families. $28,000 per family right now is how much you're paying for healthcare, and $2.5 trillion is paid by the government. That's by itself the largest thing we spend. That's a third of our budget in the government is on Medicaid and Medicare. But the Democrats don't want to face any accountability for that.
Whether you agree with Dr. Rich McCormick about what he said or not, you have got to give the guy credit, because that is the most intellectually honest argument on the other side. Meaning, I don't want to hear about nonsense about illegals getting Medicaid. We can debate the emergency room and this and this. But the bottom line is Dr. McCormick just laid out what is the most compelling argument, which is it costs money. And there are ramifications beyond just government spending to something like this. And yet, so you can agree with him, you can disagree with him, but that's why you got to hear his case that he just made out. And, I appreciate that we're not getting diverted into stuff that is irrelevant. So I'll leave it that one at that. And then I will ask you about another. And then we're going to take calls, by the way. I know everyone's thrilled to get a chance to ask you questions. We already got a ton of calls at 866-967-6887. I hadn't even called for the number yet. What do you think of the administration giving Argentina $20 billion?
Well, first of all, in South America, and we've let the Monroe Doctrine basically die. We have lost our influence over South America, Central America. We are letting China have bigger influence there than we have. If you look at Cuba, Venezuela, Brazil now, all run by dictators. Three of the most powerful nations in the Southern Hemisphere. It's a really scary thing for America to be in a position where we're losing our influence around the world. You have an incredible economy that could benefit the United States for future generations. And you
just made a very compelling case about taking fiscal care, right, and spending.
Yep.
And yet, don't you think that there needs to be more of a justification for spending $20 billion? Yeah.
I love this question. So here's whether it be Ukraine, Israel, Taiwan, any foreign aid we give,
This is more.
realize
This is
that
a big number. This is a big number.
it's a huge number. I get this, but realize if you look at the punch bowl from I think yesterday or today, they're talking about my opinion on being involved internationally, and I stand maybe alone in the Republican Congress, but if you do not get involved, somebody else will. China will take our place, and you'll have another enemy against us in our hemisphere. The question is, are you willing to take steps in a country that's doing everything they're supposed to do, by the way? They are revising their economy dramatically. They're coming into a capitalistic alignment with us. They're shirking all relationships with foreign nationalities that would push them towards communism and be a drain on our economy into the future and our power base in this hemisphere. You want to support your friends. And by the way, this will benefit us economically for generations.
So you think it's worth the investment, meaning Israel,
absolutely the worth of the investment.
Israel and Egypt get $4 billion or so each, and Argentina gets $20 billion.
Right. But realize, I'm sure this comes with strings attached. Nobody gets a free ride anymore with Trump. I promise you that. This money will come back to us in spades. And like I said, even with India, and I'm a big friend of India. I think we need to be way more careful in the way we treat India, because they're going to be the third largest economy within 5 years. They're going to rival China within the next 10 to 15 years. And then you're either having the largest democracy in the world working with us or working against us. Keep your friends close. Make sure that we are working together economically. It will benefit the entire world, I promise you.
And by the way, and to just further putting aside whether 20 billion makes any sense here, people forget about the side effects of these commitments. Meaning, for example, in Egypt and Jordan and places like that, the amount of intel we can get in fighting terrorism, et cetera, is something people forget when, like, why are we giving Egypt or Jordan or Israel? It's like, guys, without that, we're going to be running blind in the region. You have
no influence. Right. You have no influence when you're fighting the bad guys, and when you need to gang up on the Taliban and Hezbollah and Houthis. We need our friends.
I agree. The $20 billion to Argentina doesn't make any sense to me in terms of the number. It seems to me that's more a political choice, particularly for people who are talking about cutting budget. But let me ask you a final question. Then you've got tons of callers who want to ask you questions.
Don't forget about my
No, don't worry. I promise. I promise that I'm going to ask about the Incentivized Savings Act. All right. So let me phrase it this way. I got two more questions for you. One is my question, and the second one is going to be my setup too, because I read about the Incentivized Savings Act to prepare for this interview with you. What do you make of this congresswoman in Arizona who's not being sworn in? I heard Speaker Johnson say, well, once the government is up, we want to have all the pomp and circumstance around it. And she's saying, I don't need that. I just want to get sworn in. It sure seems like it's an effort just to avoid an Epstein vote, no?
The Epstein vote's going to happen sooner or later. I think we're going to be back open as soon as the No Kings, or what I call the anti-American rally, is over. And so probably within a week, she's probably going to be sworn in anyway. That's my guess. It's an uneducated guess, because the government really holds all the strings.
The government shutdown, you think, will be over in a week?
I think so. I think once the No Kings rally on the 18th is over, and they had their day of media, and they realize there's really no end piece to spending $1.5 trillion more when we can actually have a budget and actually have a budgetary process by constitutional design, they really don't have a leg to stand on. But whether she's in office or not, her office is still doing constituent services. There's no votes to be had because we're not in session. So does it really make a difference? Probably not. So yeah, you could say consistency-wise, sure, get her in. I don't think it makes a big difference, though. The Epstein stuff is not going to be voted on. We've already voted on Epstein. We already said release everything legally possible, release it. And I by the way, I'm a full transparency guy, but you realize this is an ongoing case. It's not even settled yet.
Let's talk about this Incentivized Savings Act. I hadn't even thought of this idea, right? So this is something that Congressman McCormick is spearheading. And his position is basically that, when you appropriate a certain amount of funds for something under legislation, right? What happens if you don't spend it all? And his point in this legislation is basically saying there's an incentive currently in place to spend it all, right? To just go and use all the money. And he's created legislation which is trying to do something different. Explain it to us.
Yeah, so this is something I came up with like 30 years ago. I was in the Marine Corps. I was a department head of logistics in my squadron. And at the end of my fiscal year, we saved some money just to make sure that if emergency comes up, We can spend it. Let's say we had to do a deployment to Guam for 9/11 or whatever. We always supported about 10% of our budget was set aside just in case. Well, the end of the budget year comes. If you don't spend that money, the next
Right.
year, not only does your money get spent by somebody, but you also get a smaller budget next year because they assume you don't need it. And that's the way the budgetary process works throughout the entire government. And so you are incentivized to spend every dime that's appropriated to you or else. So you get two sticks to do the wrong thing. My bill simply redesigns it. It says, if whatever you're going to spend, as long as you don't request a bigger budget next year, whatever you didn't spend, you get 49% of that money towards next year's budget. So you actually get a bigger budget. So you can buy that computer system or the upgrade or whatever you need that you couldn't afford this year with a bigger budget next year. You'd have an additional 49% that actually goes back towards debt and deficit. Imagine that. Not to the president, not to the speaker, but goes back to debt and deficit, which we all know. Democrats and Republicans agree. We have a massive debt and deficit problem.
Have you got any Democrats on
2%?
Sorry, have you got any Democrats on board with you on this one? It sounds reasonable.
I've just
right?
proposed it to 2 Democrats, and I'm looking forward because I think it makes sense.
It does. Well, look, it makes perfect common sense, right? Like, I don't even know what the argument on the other side is. It's like it makes perfect sense.
So it's a built-in dose too, and realize it has 2% bonus to the 2% left over goes to bonuses in that department up to 10% of your salary, just to incentivize you to do the right thing. So three carrots to do the right thing instead of 2 sticks to do the wrong thing. And oh, by the way, you're right. It's a built-in dose. You don't have somebody from outside saying you shouldn't spend this money. You get to determine because you know your department better than anybody. So you have the incentivization to do the right thing. I think it's brilliant.
The act is called the Incentivized Savings Act. We're talking to Congressman Rich McCormick. Before we go to calls, let me just give a shout out to Congressman McCormick, the same way I gave one to Congressman Landsman yesterday, is, these members of Congress these days, a lot of them are hiding out. They're not answering questions directly. They're unwilling to show up and just say, all right, ask me what you got. Tell me, I'll tell you what I think. And that's exactly what Dr. Rich McCormick is going to do with all of you. So when all of you wonder, like, how do you pick which members of Congress will come on the show? I picked the ones who are willing to take the calls from all of you. And Dr. McCormick is one of them. So let's go to some of the calls. Let's go to Brian in Michigan. Brian, what do you got for Congressman Rich McCormick?
Hi, Congressman. Thanks for taking the call, Dan. I had a question about the costing and the accountability for the healthcare issue related to the shutdown. I don't disagree with the Congressman's data at all about the cost. I disagree a little bit with saying like the Democrats don't care. What I'm waiting for then is what is the Republican option? They control the presidency and Congress. I haven't seen a bill to change Obamacare. Either they don't want the subsidies continue, and that's just too bad for Americans that can't afford it, or they have a bill they've been waiting for I don't know what reason to present. And I just want to know what the Congressman what the plans are for the Republican caucus to amend it.
Congressman, good question.
Thank
Congressman
you.
McCormick.
That's a great question, very honest question, and I appreciate the respect on that. So when this was initially instituted, this scale down, this supplementation that we have by the federal government for the state governments was never meant to be permanent. They could have never gotten the Democrat votes had they thought it was going to be a permanent supplementation for a state program by the federal government. It wasn't that long ago that only 1/3 of all government spending was federal and 2/3 was everybody else. Now it's 2/3 is federal government. We're spending ourselves in oblivion, printing the money, which we then pay interest on. We're paying over $1 trillion in interest payments, not paying any money down. We're actually increasing by about $3 trillion per year our debt and paying additional. And by the way, our interest rate just went up because why? We just get downgraded twice last year as a currency, which means we're a worse investment, which means we have to pay a higher percentage on interest rates when we borrow that money. Now, there doesn't need to be anything passed. This was always planned by Democrats who voted on this, that it was a temporary supplementation to states because states were always supposed to foot the bill. We gave them the carrot to expand it, but they were supposed to grab it back from us eventually. And those states who thought that the federal spending was going to be forever never either didn't read it, which is that's their ignorance, or they're just not being honest about it. Because they knew all along this was planned, just like the end of SALT is supposed to happen in a few years, but I doubt that's going to happen because the New Yorkers are going to say this should have been permanent. Well, it was never voted to be permanent. These things are temporary on purpose because we're not supposed to have that kind of spending in our budget. They knew that. That's why they passed it that way. We don't have to vote on anything. That's not even reforming Affordable Care Act. And you're right. I think the Affordable Care Act needs to be at least amended to make it much more efficient and less fraudulent, if at the very least. And revising it entirely would be a very hard thing to do, as we know we have so many opinions. But at least we stick to the agreement we had. This is not a new agreement.
Yep.
This is a planned retraction of federal spending that we knew was coming all along, voted on by 100% of Democrats. By the way.
Let's go to Tyler in Houston. Tyler, what do you got for Congressman Rich McCormick?
Hey, Congressman, good afternoon. I've got two quick questions for you, and I'll give you a little bit of background. I would consider myself a conservative Democrat. I'm not a fan of Trump at all. I give him a ton of credit for what he did for the ceasefire. So this isn't just a gotcha question that I'm going to ask. Twofold. Number one, regarding the ACA, it's admirable that you guys want to amend the ACA. The problem is during Trump 1.0, they tried to repeal it. It was completely rejected. This seems like what's going on within this current negotiation is kind of a backdoor, kind of a D-bag way to get what Trump really wanted from the get-go. Number two, I love that you're talking about the deficit. How do you square away with the fact that Trump increased the deficit so significantly between 2017 and 2021?
Thank you, Tyler.
Two good questions. First of all, let's go back to what this is not a backdoor thing at all. This is always planned. Always a plan by 100% of the Democrats that voted on this to pass it in the first place. The Affordable Care Act was never meant to be a permanent pay for, like 80% of some, I think 5 different states that are going to be paid by the federal government this year. And that's with the new agreement. And sorry, it's not even a new agreement. That's with the agreement we already have in place. We still have massive supplementation for states, just not as much. And then the insurance companies will use that as an excuse to increase their premiums by 9%, knowing that they're making 230% more profit since before the Affordable Care Act. They are so used to drinking from this $5 trillion trough known as healthcare in America. They're not backing down. 4 of the top 10 companies in the Fortune 500 are insurance companies. I think 7 out of the top 10, they're making record profits, my friends. They're not the good guys. This is a fight against lobbyists. Let's make this very clear. This is planned. This is voted on by the Democrats. It's not a backdoor way of doing anything to defund the Affordable Care Act. It is sticking with the original plan that they voted on. Everything else is pure rhetoric and spin. It is not the truth. I'm a straight shooter when it comes to healthcare.
You want to tackle the other question on the deficit?
Yeah, sure do.
Yeah.
So that was during COVID era spending, and we're still doing it, by the way. I'm totally against what happened. And basically, by the way, this happened with Medicare expansion by Bush in 2004. That was the first big parabolic shift towards government spending. Then it happened again during the housing crisis of 2008, which we never got back to normal spending. Then it happened again during COVID, which we never got back to normal spending. And that's the exact problem. It used to be after World War II, when we had record deficit spending, we went right back to what we're supposed to be at, and we became responsible again. Those last string things we saw since 94, which is a bipartisan issue, not a partisan issue. I'm not going to blame it on anybody other than we, the people in Congress, have done the wrong thing. It's time to right the ship, and it means some hard decisions. I get it. But the states have to do what they're supposed to do. This is never meant to have federal overreach.
Let me take one more call before a break with Congressman Rich McCormick. Let's go to Mark in Ohio. Mark, what do you got for Congressman McCormick?
For you, you're telling us that we can't afford the $1.5 trillion that Democrats are wanting. Can you explain to us why exactly you voted to increase spending by $4.2 trillion on the Trump tax cuts for the billionaires?
Congressman?
So let's first of all realize that it wasn't new tax cuts. It was locking in what Biden had all 4 years he was president. When we reduced the tax rate originally through the original budget process, where we cut the amount of corporate tax rates, we ended up with what? An increase or decrease in revenue? You would know as a reporter, it was an increase because people started expanding their businesses. They didn't hide their money anymore. If we increase taxes, good chance, because we've seen this in the past, you actually decrease revenue. So it's not going to end up with greater or less deficit spending. Now, in this next year, you're right, it expanded by $416 billion in spending. I was against that, but it was the best possible bill we could get. I'm one of the most fiscally conservative members of Congress. I didn't want SALT, didn't want it, but couldn't pass it without SALT. So therefore, I was stuck either voting for that or nothing. And because we didn't have anything else on the table. So if I'm going to be an honest person, was it what I wanted? No. but it was the best thing I could get. And you're right. I don't. But by the way, it's a dishonest to say it's an increase by $4 trillion. It's a sustainment of what we had before of a corporate tax rate and R&D credit that was making business expand rapidly and sustain the economy during the Biden administration, which is going to carry over in the Trump administration. You increase corporate tax rates, good luck with your future economy and with the job market for your kids.
Congressman Rich McCormick, stick around. We're going to take a quick break here. The call lines are all full. We got a lot of call lines, too, for Congressman McCormick. Let's go to John in Buffalo, New York. John, how you doing? What do you got?
Hey, great. So I'm a physician, and, the congressman, he cited a number where healthcare costs have gone up by 200% since Obamacare has started. And instead of just passing the buck on to, the people who are paying the tax bills or paying for it out of their pocket through private insurance, why isn't there more rules and regulations about what the insurance companies can and cannot do for price increases? I'll give up a specific example, too, which is infuriating. One of the things that I often do with my patients is not all the time medications are covered, or sometimes they're even more expensive to go through your insurance company. There's a company called GoodRx, and often it's just a free coupon voucher program. Why is it even allowed that if you have private insurance that has the power to negotiate with pharmacies and everything else, that you end up paying more money if you have private insurance as opposed to this free voucher program? I mean, I just don't even understand how this is even legal.
You're asking the perfect person who is both a member of Congress and a doctor. Dr. McCormick, what do you make of it? Rich McCormick, what do you make of this question? Yeah.
Actually, great question. And this is exactly what it's about. When the PBMs get involved, and the PBMs are bad actors in the zoo, vertically integrated with the insurance companies, forcing those price points up. And by the way, be honest, your premiums went up by 90%, but probably your copays and your deductibles also went up on top of that. That's why it's the biggest cost to all American families. And you're right. Why are these insurance companies allowed to do this? And quite frankly, we could regulate, and this is what the government always does, say, well, I'm going to regulate how much you make. Instead, wouldn't it be better to make sure that other companies could compete with them fairly, that you didn't have the barriers to the market so that you could force the price point down? As a doctor, you'd know, when LASIK eye surgery first came out, it was like over $4,000 per eye. And that was, 40 years ago? Now it's under $1,000 per eye. Why? Because it's not mandated to be paid for by insurance company or government. So you have competition driving the price down. It's 1/4 the price it used to be. If insurance companies were regulated and said you have to pay for it, it'd be $40,000. It'd be 10 times more. That's the funny thing about the free market and how it works. We need to regulate so that you have competition, free and fair competition, rather than putting caps where we have these artificial caps and they still get to do exactly what they've done all along, which is have baked in profit margins, not caring how much you spend because they always get that 10% margin regardless. I think that's what's wrong with healthcare to begin with.
John, thank you. Phil is in Michigan. Phil, how you doing? What do you got?
Well, it's Bill, but I appreciate you taking the call anyway.
Sorry, Bill.
Doctor, I'm wondering if you were at the Capitol on January 6th, and if you were, or whether were you or not, how you feel about all those people being pardoned for the damage and the things they did that day.
I think it was about January 6th. Is that what I heard?
Yeah, he was asking how you felt about the pardons.
Yeah, so I wasn't in January 6th. I wasn't in office. I came in the very next election cycle. I don't know. I'm not. I mean, that would be a great question for Barry Loudermilk. Each one of those cases would have to be judged individually. I certainly don't have time to judge each one of those individually. That's why he has an entire oversight committee on those people. He didn't pardon everybody. So the question is, what were they prosecuted for? What was the infraction? Was it fitting? Have they served the amount of jail time they normally would? I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm a doctor.
Yeah,
and so that's
true.
I'm not playing Captain Kirk here or Bones. Yeah. But I'm just being honest with you. That's an individual basis question.
They didn't do it on an individual basis, did they? I mean, they just did a sweeping clemency and pardons for everybody.
No, not everybody was pardoned. I don't think.
Or clemency.
I'm pretty sure they weren't.
Yeah, everyone got a pardon or clemency. Yeah.
I don't think so. But I'm not familiar with all the cases. I know that most of those people have already served a lot of jail time. The question is, what did they do? I don't know what each one of them done. I'm sure there's been an investigation on each and every one of them.
All right, Congressman Rich McCormick, who gets enormous credit for, again, showing up and taking all your calls. And I can't emphasize enough how important I think that is. And this is an environment that we're living in where people are living in their bubbles. Dr. Rich McCormick is not one of them. and he'll come out there and listen to your questions. He'll take your calls. You can agree with him. You can disagree with him, but he'll tell you his point of view and he'll respond. And we really appreciate you taking the time. Thank you.
Well, I appreciate being on your show. Semper Fi, and God bless you guys.
Thanks so much.